It begins in the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses on your chest at 2:13 a.m. when the world is sleeping, but your thoughts refuse to. You lie there, screen glowing dimly in the dark, scrolling, swiping, reaching. You tell yourself it's just lust, a normal craving, a need. Just one more video, one more image, one more fantasy. But deep down, something feels off, not just after, but during. Even in the heat of it, there's a chill, an eerie silence beneath the noise of your craving. It's not desire, it's something darker, something emptier. The truth, it's not about the bodies, not really. It's not about her, it's not about the moment. It's about you, about the hole inside you that keeps stretching wider no matter how much you try to fill it. The ache isn't in your body, it's in your soul. Carl Jung knew this. Long before screens and algorithms, he saw how humans would do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And lust? It's one of the loudest ways we try to drown out the silence inside. This is what no one tells you. Lust isn't your sin, it's your symptom. Your soul is gasping for connection, not sexual, but sacred. But you don't know how to sit with that kind of pain. You were never taught how to hold your loneliness, so you chase distraction. You think you're hungry for pleasure, but really, you're starving for presence. You want to be seen, not ogled. Held, not handled. Touched, not used. But since you've forgotten how to reach inward, you reach outward. And every time it ends, you're left in the same place, alone, unchanged, unmet. What if this isn't about lust at all? What if the craving you feel in your chest isn't for a body, but for your own? For the part of you you stopped listening to. Jung would say this is the shadow, not evil, but exiled. The part of you that was never loved right, now looking for love in all the wrong ways. The longer you avoid it, the louder it gets. Lust screams so you don't hear what your silence is trying to whisper. Not, I want her, but, I miss me. So pause, right here, before the next tap, the next scroll, the next click. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to feel? What am I actually afraid to face? Because this isn't about another hit of dopamine. This is about your soul trying to get your attention, and it won't stop until you listen. You tell yourself it's just a habit, a harmless release, something everyone does. But if it's so harmless, why does it haunt you afterward? Why does it feel like something is missing, not from your night, but from you? The screen fades to black, the room quiets again, and in that stillness, you feel it, that echo of emptiness. The silence that no video, no message, no body can ever fill. You thought it was lust. It isn't. It's loneliness, wearing lingerie. It's the shadow reaching for something it can't name. Jung spoke of this shadow not as a monster, but as a messenger. It's the part of you that got locked away the moment you learned to survive instead of feel. That child inside you, who was never held the way he needed. That boy who learned that being wanted was safer than being known. Now, as a man, he scrolls not for sex, but for something sacred. A reunion with the parts of himself he had to abandon. But instead of going inward, he searches faces, bodies, heat, dopamine. And still, none of it touches him. Not really. That's the tragedy, isn't it? You chase intensity, but feel nothing. You crave closeness, but only create more distance. You're surrounded by people, messages, possibilities, and yet you've never felt more disconnected from your own soul. Because when you turn away from yourself long enough, you start mistaking anything that stimulates you for something that sees you, and they are not the same. One distracts you from your ache. The other invites you into it. Jung said that lust, when divorced from the soul, is just projection. It's not her you want. It's the lost you she reminds you of. Her softness. That's your tenderness you don't know how to access anymore. Her beauty. That's your light you've forgotten how to feel. When you scroll, When you imagine, when you ache, you're not chasing her. You're chasing the you that you buried. And that's why it never works. Because no matter how fast you run toward the fantasy, it's still you you're running from. So what now? Do you quit cold turkey? Do you shame yourself into silence? Number, you listen, you slow down, you sit with the wave instead of riding it blindly. You let it speak instead of silencing it. Because every urge has something to say. Every craving carries a coded message. And if you don't decode it, you'll keep chasing shadows, believing they're lovers. But they're not. They're signals. And the longer you ignore them, the louder they'll scream. It starts to change you slowly, invisibly. You don't notice it at first. You still smile, you still function. But something inside you is slipping. You stop making eye contact. You pull away during real conversations. You laugh on cue, but the warmth isn't there. And when the silence comes, you reach for your phone like a reflex. Not because you're bored, but because you're terrified. Terrified of being alone with the one person you keep avoiding yourself. You think it's lust that's reshaping you, but it's not. It's disconnection. From your emotions, from your purpose, from your own body. Lust is just the mask it wears. The performance of passion that hides a soul that hasn't been held in years. You chase what feels like intimacy, the late-night chats, the lingering DMs, the memory of someone who once looked at you like you mattered. But it's all surface, skin without soul, heat without home. And the more you indulge, the more unreal you become to yourself. Jung warned about this, the psychic possession that happens when we feed the craving but starve the self. It becomes a loop. Trigger, reaction, guilt, repeat. And each time you give in, the real you fades a little further into the shadows. You forget how to sit with awkwardness, how to be bored, how to long for something without killing the ache with distraction. And worst of all, you begin to believe that this is just who you are now. Someone who needs this. Someone who can't stop. But that's the lie. You weren't born hungry for bodies. You were born hungry for love, for warmth, for presence. And when life didn't give you those things, your soul improvised. It built fantasies where you were wanted, where you were powerful, where you could never be rejected. But in doing so, it also taught you to hide from real love, because real love requires courage, vulnerability, repetition, failure. And you've been avoiding all of it not because you're weak, but because you're wounded. So now, the question is no longer, how do I stop lusting? The question is, what am I afraid to feel if I don't? The craving isn't your enemy, it's your compass. And if you follow it with awareness, not shame, it will lead you back to the part of you that never stopped wanting something real. But you have to be brave enough to feel the silence and stay. Because until you do, you'll keep reaching for people like lifeboats and never learn how to swim inside your own soul. At some point, the craving intensifies. Not because you need more pleasure, but because you're feeling less of everything else. The rush gets shorter, the emptiness grows louder. You stop creating. You stop showing up. The parts of you that once lit up at purpose, at meaning, at wonder, they start to dim. All that energy meant to build something real is now consumed in short-lived fires. Lust becomes your shortcut to aliveness. But every shortcut has a toll, and this one charges you in soul fragments. Jung called it psychic possession, when a complex hijacks your willpower and you're no longer choosing your actions. They're choosing you. You're not scrolling because you want to. You're scrolling because your shadow needs to forget. And the longer you live like this, the more you confuse stimulation for intimacy. You start mistaking performance for presence. You become so used to the high that real love feels boring. Real conversations feel like effort. Real silence feels like death. And here's the scariest part. You start to lose faith in yourself. Not in your talent or your intellect, in your capacity to love. You begin to think maybe you're broken. Maybe you can't feel. Maybe real connection was never meant for you. But Jung would say you're not broken. You're disconnected from your anima, your inner feminine. The part of you that nurtures, that cries, that holds. You were taught to repress it, to fear it. So instead of embodying love, you chase symbols of it. And every time, it leaves you colder than before. You promise yourself, never again. But then, night falls, loneliness whispers, and before you know it, you're back in the loop, betraying your own values. Not out of malice, but out of desperation. The same fire that could have warmed you now burns you from the inside, and you wonder, what happened to my softness, my creativity, my dreams? They didn't die. They're buried under the weight of a hunger that's been misfed for too long. A soul that's been tricked into thinking the body of another could restore the parts of you that you yourself abandoned. But here's the truth, most won't tell you. The longer you feed lust without presence, the less human you feel. You stop evolving, you stop dreaming, you stop hearing the quiet voice inside that says, "This isn't who I came here to be." And that voice that whispers in the silence is your lifeline. The way out doesn't start with hating yourself. It starts with asking the question Jung asked his patients, what is this craving trying to teach me about me? Because when you stop running from the fire and start listening to it, transformation begins. It begins in the moment you don't run. When the craving rises like a storm and, for once, you don't chase it. You stay. You stay in your body. You stay in the ache. You feel the burn crawl across your skin, the tension coil in your chest, the ache whispering, "Feed me." But you don't. Not this time. You breathe. You listen. And in the silence that follows, not the numb kind, but the sacred kind, you hear something else. A voice you forgot. Faint, trembling, honest. It says, "I miss you." That's the voice of the boy you left behind. The one who equated performance with love. The one who learned to earn touch instead of trust. He's still there. Not dirty. Not broken. Just unmet. Jung never said to kill your cravings. He said to feel them, to learn from them, to bring them into the light and ask, what are you really pointing to? Because lust, unchecked, becomes addiction. But lust, witnessed, becomes transformation. A fire that doesn't burn down but burns through. All the illusions, all the shame, all the stories that said, you're not enough unless someone wants you. And so you return not to fantasy, not to another app or another screen, but to your soul. You start small. You write again, not to prove anything, but to feel. You breathe deeper. You cry harder. You allow stillness to become a sacred space, not a punishment. You ask, every day, what do I actually want right now? And you listen, not for craving, but for clarity. Because healing lust isn't about repression, it's about reconnection. It's a relationship you rebuild with your own soul, moment by moment, craving by craving, silence by silence. Over time, something shifts. The urge doesn't vanish, it just loses control over you. It no longer drives you blindly. You feel it rise, and you stay rooted. You see it, and you choose. Because now, you know the truth. You were never addicted to her. You were addicted to feeling whole. But that feeling, that wholeness, it was never inside someone else. It was always your own, buried beneath your numbness, hidden under your shame, waiting in the silence you kept running from. The ache was never evil. It was sacred. It was your compass. And when someone finally comes along, someone real, someone soft, someone whole, you no longer need to possess them. You don't need them to complete you, to rescue you, to hold the pieces you've already reclaimed, because you've done that. In the dark, alone. And now, when you touch, it isn't to escape. It's to connect. When you love, it's not to silence the void. It's to sing with it. Lust no longer owns you. It fuels you not toward fantasy, but toward truth. And that as Jung would say, is the sacred fire, the return of the soul.